The scariest fighter in MMA won and then retired. He's back. Applause. Come on. Hey, boo. Applause. He won and then he retired. I don't know if I'm going to fight Dr. Gone again, and that's all I'm going to have to say. But why? Why did the most fascinating MMA fighter leave the sport undefeated at only 29 years old? The Neanderthal's identity is still shrouded in mystery. Who is he? Who are his parents? Where did he come from? Why is he so strong? And now there's a new question. Early life of the Neanderthal. Why did he leave? Today, you'll get all the answers. The answers are about the most intriguing fighter in MMA since Conor McGregor. This Viking was born in Dusseldorf, Germany, which, of course, is not surprising given his appearance. What is surprising, however, is the fact that he began training in BJJ at the age of 16, inspired by a UFC video game. The cover of that game featured none other than Brock Lesnar, who at the time was the UFC heavyweight champion. The Neanderthal absolutely loved the game. He constantly tried to replicate the moves from the game in real life. MMA moves, or more precisely, grappling techniques that became ingrained in his mind. This eventually led him to start training in real life. He was studying grappling and wrestling theory, drilling different transitions, trips, and basic techniques. Everything that beginner athletes who choose wrestling typically start their journey with. After 7 years of persistent training, he ultimately earned his black belt in London, possible thanks to many years of competing and complete fearlessness toward opposition. The teacher, sensei, and mentor of Frederick in BJJ is Dickie Martin, who teaches at Carlos Gracie, London. However, Frederick's desire to improve pushed him not only to train abroad, but also to work with coaches from various countries and cultures. For example, his wrestling coach is Lubomir Karov, an experienced wrestler from Bulgaria. The German also states that Karov is the strongest man he has ever sparred with due to his immense experience and incredible mastery. The desire to pursue wrestling and grappling is not exactly a typical German pastime. However, our hero, despite all odds, managed to achieve quite a lot in this field. In 2018, our hero competed at the IBJJF British National Open, where he went up against Dominic Bell. The fight lasted around 9 minutes, during which Vosgrun's opponent appeared to be performing better. Frederick made a couple of attempts to shoot for a single or double leg takedown, but Dominic was ready with strong defense, often securing the dominant position and scoring points. By the end of the allotted time, it was Dominic who had his hand raised in victory, while our hero, as always, gained valuable experience. In footage from the same 2018, the German faced Tim Breeze. The two scrambled all over the mat, each trying to execute a submission or capitalize on the other's mistake. We'll say right away that neither athlete managed to secure a submission, but because Frederick appeared more efficient and came closer to finishing the fight, the victory was awarded to him. In 2020, the Viking claimed third place at the World Championship No-Gi. Besides that, he was a frequent participant in the Polaris Grand Prix, where he would occasionally win $10,000. And of course, he took first place at the ADCC Trials. Here you can see a championship that took place in June 2020 called Battle Grapple 6. There, the Neanderthal competed against Ed Einels, with whom he wrestled on the ground for 10 minutes straight. For the majority of the match, our hero controlled the action, either staying on top or taking his opponent's back. However, it ultimately wasn't enough to secure a victory. In the end, the referee raised both competitors' hands, resulting in a draw. In November, the Neanderthal appeared once again at the IBJJF No-Gi Championship, this time clashing with Khalil Fadl. The Viking showcased his abilities impressively, defeating his opponent with one of his favorite submissions, an arm triangle choke, which he secured in just 6 minutes. In March 2022, this beast launched another campaign at the Open Nogai event, determined to capture yet another trophy. There, he managed to tap out Joshua Guerrera in less than a minute with a devastating leg submission. He is highly accomplished in the grappling world, but what about his MMA career? You've probably already guessed that his success in MMA is built on his strong background in other disciplines, where he had already achieved notable results. thanks to his foundation in jiu-jitsu, grappling, and a specific style of wrestling adapted for fighting. He and his team developed an approach that allows him to prepare for every opponent during training camps. Right now, he is focused solely on MMA because that's what he truly wants to pursue, to become a better fighter. It's the only path he and his coaches are following, and the skills he gained from all those ground-based disciplines remain his main weapon inside the cage. His MMA debut took place on May 30th, 2021, at the first numbered event of Levels Fight League. The Neanderthal's opponent was Hassan Okaroglu. The 25-year-old German debuted not in the light heavyweight division, but in the middleweight division. At that point, he wasn't in his terrifying Brock Lesnar-like form, but he still looked intimidating compared to his opponent. Without a second thought, he went straight after Okaroglu. The first round was completely dictated by Frederick. He took his opponent down, controlled him on the ground, and didn't just hold the position, but was constantly searching for a stoppage. I guess the other leg isn't trapped. Not that all this is a sport jiu-jitsu mentality, because if the fight doesn't go your way and you want to finish but can't, then you're in big trouble. The German's wrestling and groundwork truly resemble Brock Lesnar or Khabib Nurmagomedov. He is always trying to finish the fight or inflict damage. Even when the opponent manages to escape, Frederick secures both hooks, searching for the rear naked choke or applying intense pressure. This often transitions into a face crank, a brutal submission that exerts crushing pressure on the jawline, nose, and teeth, causing unbearable pain even if it doesn't result in a tap. And in the second round, the situation did not change. It was not a great start for Aeon as he backed himself into a corner. And once the Neanderthal starts to pressure you, it's only a matter of time before you drown under it. He wasn't rushing or making reckless moves. He stayed composed and calculated. As the saying goes, when we get tired, we do stupid things. Eventually, the fighters went to the ground once again, and this time, the Neanderthal secured a finish over his opponent with an arm triangle choke. As expected, the fight played out just as predicted. He showcased his elite grappling and jiu-jitsu abilities. Blue corner, Frederick Boss. Despite his primitive, almost aboriginal appearance, the hero of this story is actually highly intelligent and deeply critical of himself and his performances. After his debut fight, here's what he had to say. He admitted that he could have performed much better, but considered it acceptable for a first MMA fight. However, he wasn't truly satisfied with his performance. He was eager to get back to training and was already looking forward to his next fight. But fate had other plans. Over the next 3 years, he was unable to return to the MMA octagon, competing only once in a grappling event in 2022. There was much speculation about the reasons behind his absence. Some believed he was dealing with an injury, while others suggested it was simply too difficult to find him an opponent. But once you witness his next MMA appearance, you'll likely understand the real reason. It was all about training. The Viking was dead serious when he said he wasn't happy with his debut. During those years away from the cage, he was training relentlessly, not just to fight opponents, but to destroy them. Finally, in October 2024, he returned to action at We Love MMA 74. His opponent, Christian Pfizer. The 28-year-old light heavyweight finally showed his best form yet. He won the fight in just 16 seconds by submission. Applause. Winning a fight quickly by knockout is impressive, but winning quickly by submission is truly exceptional. A vicious heel hook from the German fighter extended his winning streak to 2 in a row. Music. Applause. This dominant victory motivated the Neanderthal to return to the cage just a month later at We Love MMA 76, where he once again finished his opponent, Nicholas Jojovic, with the same heel hook submission. Compared to the previous 16-second finish, this bout felt longer. Jojovic managed to survive for a minute and a half before succumbing to the German's relentless ground attack. Such impressive back-to-back victories drew significant attention from fans and analysts alike, who began to wonder when the hero of this story would make it to the UFC, and what his ultimate ambitions were. However, the Neanderthal remained remarkably modest in his statements. He said that while he is currently dominating in MMA, he hasn't been competing long enough to start thinking about future plans or prospects. One thing he knows for sure, though, is that his extensive experience in wrestling, BJJ, and grappling is more than enough to compensate for any lack of preparation in striking technique. For now, he wins all his fights because he knows he holds a decisive advantage on the ground. In grappling scenarios, he is far more knowledgeable, with more options, more transitions, and more ways to secure victory than all of his opponents combined. After these statements, it seemed as though a slightly calmer chapter of the Neanderthal's career might be on the horizon. But that was not the case. His very next fig. The Neanderthal's relentless pursuit of his opponent, at any cost, was on full display during his next fight. The brutal beatdown took place on April 5, 2025, at Octagon 69. This showdown was made possible thanks to his opponent, Jerk Montiak, and all the action came to a dramatic end in the second round via arm triangle choke. But the finish itself wasn't the most important part of this fight. What truly captured the attention of the internet was the wild chase and ferocity with which the German prospect hunted his opponent, a display that reminded many fans of the brutal takedowns once delivered by former UFC heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar. This fight completely changed the trajectory of the Neanderthal's career. Even he seemed to realize it in the middle of the bout. As the fight went on, he could hear the crowd's reaction, a wave of cheers that grew louder with every exchange. Oh, that left hand is money as well. Oh, wow! The commentators' reactions mirrored the fans' excitement. The Neanderthal showed unyielding determination, refusing to let go of his opponent once he gained control. When the fight went to the ground, the crowd roared in approval, chanting his name with every movement. And when he finally secured the victory, the arena erupted, cheering even louder than before. Jurek Montiak did everything he could to escape the German's suffocating grip, but the pressure was simply too much. The Neanderthal later said that this incredible support from the fans deeply motivated him to push harder and deliver an even more dominant performance. As the fight continued, the German advanced his position. He's going to the side of the cage. A little harder to finish here, but Montiak is trying to roll, and widely regarded as one of the most dangerous rising prospects in the division. On paper, this was the toughest challenge Frederick Vorskone, the man fans had come to know as the Neanderthal or the Viking, had ever faced. Moors was younger, faster, and technically more refined than most of Vorskone's previous opponents. Many analysts predicted that this would finally be the fight to test his limits, perhaps even expose them. But if you watch the fight, it certainly doesn't seem that way. From the very first second, Vorskone entered the cage with the same primal ferocity and relentless determination that had become his trademark. The bell rang and the Viking wasted no time studying his opponent or feeling out the distance. Instead, he charged forward like a storm, driving Mortz backward with pressure that was both physical and psychological. Every step he took closed the distance, and every movement had one singular purpose: to get his hands on Mortz and drag him into the world where Vorskone was king, the ground. Once he managed to clinch, there was no escape. Vorskone latched onto Mortz's leg with the kind of grip that has broken the will of many fighters before, refusing to let go until he had secured the takedown. The crowd roared as the two hit the mat, and almost immediately, the German powerhouse began unleashing a barrage of strikes from inside Mortz's guard. Punch after punch rained down, not wild, desperate swings, but calculated, punishing blows meant to break his opponent's defenses and spirit. In total, Vorskone landed nearly 50 strikes in rapid succession, overwhelming Mortz with pressure he had likely never felt before. But what came next revealed just how far Vorskone's grappling had evolved. Instead of settling for a ground-and-pound finish, a tactic that would have been more than enough to end the fight, he chose a different path. Methodically, he advanced his position, transitioning from guard to half guard and eventually into full mount with surgical precision. From there, he tightened his control, isolating Mortz's neck and cutting off any attempt to scramble free. And then, in a display of pure dominance and technical mastery, He locked in a choke that forced the tap in seconds. Despite Fabio Morza's impressive record, his skill set, and his experience, the fight was one-sided from start to finish. The Neanderthal turned what many believed would be a career-defining challenge into another emphatic statement. It wasn't just a victory. It was a message to the entire division. Even at this stage of his career, Frederick Vorskona remained an unstoppable force, capable of dismantling elite opposition with ease. And yet, despite the dominance inside the cage, what followed outside of it would prove to be far more surprising than the fight itself. From guard, the German unleashed a storm of strikes, nearly 50 in total, before smoothly transitioning into mount. Music. And instead of finishing the fight with punches, applause, he decided to choke his opponent out, which he did quickly and decisively. Applause. Despite Morza's impressive record, skill, and experience, the Neanderthal turned him into a punching bag.